Awesome. So grateful to be here with you, Kat. And for everyone watching this, I'm really excited for the conversation we're going to have with Dr. Kat Wallace. And I think this is going to be a conversation where we'll touch on a lot of topics and have some fun, but the goal is just to be of service and value to the people out there trying to make this world just a little bit better. And yeah, we're going to be letting some people in as we do the recording. But Kat, I have gotten the pleasure of getting to know you over the last, I guess, year and a half, maybe. And
Right.
I'll share a little bit of your background and then I'll hand it over to you to share more. Um, but the world knows you as one of the leading thought leaders in ethical AI in tech. You've written books. You've been a shark on Shark Tank, and you've done a lot of things that I think people could see in a cool bio or your LinkedIn. But the way I know you is somebody who really fights for this planet and for its inhabitants. And you're a voice for the voiceless. You care about children, you care about where this train is going in terms of how technology could affect us. And overall, having been in the deep jungles of Peru with you, you have an incredible connection to nature and the natural built world. And here we typically meet in the Land Steward Alliance as a group of people who come from different walks of life, backgrounds from people starting land projects to investors to architects and engineers. And we don't come to share like the latest findings and knowledge. We come to support each other on the process of our projects and the project of our lives and just being human while trying to be in this whole thing. And so, yeah, I would love to hand it over to you to give us a little bit of your background and anything you find relevant you want to share.
Excellent. Well, delighted to be here. And today I'm sitting on Bundjalung country, which is the traditional owners of Sydney, Australia. And this is the land of the Arakwal people. So I'd like to start to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and to acknowledge that this land is, was, and always will be Aboriginal land. And to note also that this land was never ceded. So my orientation now and how I'll talk to you, Ed, and those watching is from a deep respect of land and country and spirit. Even though I am a professor of organizational behavior and science and an AI and metaverse specialist, my strong orientation comes from a place of consciousness and spirituality and the land itself. And I'm delighted that this is a group of people who may listen who are also oriented around land. So briefly, my background, I only ever wanted to be a farmer. That was how I started out. Then became a police officer, then a sociologist, a management consultant. I went on to be an academic. So I have a PhD in organizational behavior. My area of expertise is the role of technology replacing human leaders. So I finished that in 2007, way before AI was really talked about thing. I am the chair of a venture capital fund, very successful AI venture capital fund. So I'm across all of the investment mandates and theses now around particularly AI and emerging technology. More recently, very interested in the coming of quantum computing meets AI. This is the world's about to shift and change again. And then I've built a number of businesses. So market research companies, strategy companies, advisory firms, and the one that I am the head of at the moment is called the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. So I've been running this company for the last 3 years, and this is working with policymakers, law enforcement around the world to start to bring in policy legislation for the metaverse, because we think AI is a bit crazy now with really only one set of regulations or legislation in place, which is the recent EU Act for AI, which was enacted last year. Pretty much we have no other legislation or regulation that governs any of this emerging tech field, which is a very dangerous place to be. So I work with organizations like Interpol and politicians and standards organizations across the world to start to bring in guidelines regulation for the metaverse, because if you think shit is crazy now, it's going to get much more crazy and much more dangerous when it's a fully immersive world, 3D world that the tech giants run. So a lot of my work now is holding the tech giants to account. So, somewhere across social media, we'll see me saying, fuck you, tech giants, you need to wake up because children are being killed and the earth is being deeply impacted by particularly the impact that emerging tech has on environmental resources, which most people don't know about, that AI pollutes more than the whole aviation industry, let alone when we're using powerful quantum and other processing. So pretty concerned about the role that that has. So yeah, I have a full-blown corporate career. I worked in quite a lot in television, as you mentioned. I was a shark in Shark Tank Australia, but I was the one who was investing in minority businesses and anything that may look like it would go to AI. So it's put me in the world of billionaires and investors. So I walk in that world mostly uncomfortably, but I know it. I know how investment works and the good things for entrepreneurs to do in order to get investment. I've raised a ton of money in my time. The AI company I founded in 2013 and sold in 2020. We were one of the first AI companies to list on the Australian Stock Exchange. So raise money privately, raise money in the capital markets. I've done all that. So happy to share some advice on that. So that I would say, yes, written a couple of books. Checkmate Humanity, the how and why of responsible AI. So that's my corporate career, which is very mainstream and academic and entrepreneurial. But I also walk a very strong shamanic path. So my journey with this started in my late 20s, apprenticing to a Native American elder in New Mexico. So I trained there in Indigenous spirituality and healing, as I did with Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, very close relationship community there. And then maybe almost 5 years ago, I started on a stronger path working in Mexico and Peru with different plant medicines. So I now am trained to carry Bufo alvarius, the 5-MeO-DMT, the Sonora Desert Toad medicine. So I trained for 3.5 years to carry and serve that medicine. That is the most potent psychedelic in the world, the God molecule. A very powerful medicine. I carry that. I work with psilocybin. So I do work with people who have severe trauma or suicidal ideation. I work with them over a period of a year, working with this beautiful medicine, the golden teachers and other psilocybin medicines. I work with Wachuma, the San Pedro, and have done some training up in the Andes in Peru, up in the temples of Chavin. And I also work as a support person in working with ayahuasca. So to the jungle, Ed, where you and I went with the Shipibo people, I've been initiated into the Shipibo tradition of working with this sacred plant medicine, ayahuasca, and the dietas working with other non-psychoactive plant medicines. So I have a deep and profound respect for plant medicines. My view is that this is the great mother earth. It's a conduit to we humans. We're pretty stupid and we don't listen and we can't connect very well. So the plants, the fungi, the toad are mechanisms by way the mother communicates to us what is needed. And I've learned from Australian Aboriginal people that rather than me going, oh, what is my purpose and who am I and me, it's much more about asking, what is needed of me. So what is the world, what does the planet need of me? And I think the best entity to ask is what is the great mother, what is needed of me. And I think the plants are a great way to do that. And so I'm in the process of writing a book at the moment. I was commissioned by Wiley Publishers to write a book on rapid transformation. So the thesis there is that world faces big problems. We have leadership in place at the moment, but it doesn't seem to be solving many of these problems. There needs to be another way. And I have a kind of 3-pronged model of how leaders can rapidly transform, which is return to ritual, so back to practice and rituals, the use of plant medicines and organic medicines to create altered states, to create new visions, to heal, to understand what is needed, and then embracing emerging tech like AI and potentially quantum to have powerful tools that support the rapid transformation of of leadership and societal problems. So that book will be due out in October, and it's really the thesis that kind of sums up who I am, combining advanced tech and ancient medicines.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kat. Wow, there's so many different things we can broach, and I definitely want to hear more about the effects that AI and tech can have on the planet that we don't like. I didn't know about the pollution example that you gave, because so many of us are looking at parts of a solution with land projects, eco villages, healing centers, but they don't really understand, and neither do I sometimes, the effect that the tech that's out there can have on this natural built world. But I actually want to start from another side of what you shared, because you're one of the few people I know who walks between the business world, the spiritual world, and you really have yeah, you have a heart about it. You're not some ruthless investor. I've seen you talk to people in projects. You've also supported Futuro Nativo Pipa, who's part of the LSA, and her work with the indigenous. And a lot of times, I think I work with people who consider investors like this weird silo of humans that they have to pitch one day. They can't talk to. It's just show the thing and that's it. And so I was curious, from somebody who cares about the direction the planet is going, but is also like, you ask important questions that any investor would ask. It's not that you can bypass the important stuff. I wanted to ask you, what are some of your biggest pieces of advice you give people looking to raise money for a project that has impact or that it's part of their deep passion? Where do you see some common pitfalls, or what is typical advice you end up giving over and over again to people?
Yeah, these are great questions, Ed. So I think the first thing for entrepreneurs or people on land projects who are looking to seek investment is not to lead with your social impact, because investors, regardless if they are social impact investors, actually always want a return. It's not free money that giving away. They're not making a donation unless they specifically say that they are. So it's best to lead on, what is the business? How is it going to make money? How is this investor going to get a return? That's first and foremost. Once you've got the attention of the investor with regard to that, then bring in the social impact. So I see this as a classic problem where entrepreneurs want to pitch their social impact, and investors actually, will always be a secondary thing to them. Otherwise, they'll be philanthropists.
Yeah, very well said. And what do you feel? I think this is also a big misconception, which is I've seen investors who want to be part of projects. They want to give advice along the way, criticize the model, not just that, or give constructive criticism, not just be pitched like this is how we're doing it. How do you engage in actually coaching and supporting people sometimes? And do you feel that that's important that people share more openly?
Yeah, so I think, probably two types of investors: those that will give their money and hope that it goes well, but they're too busy to become involved in the specific project. And there's others who would like to be involved in a project. And I think it can be good and it can be dangerous, because you've also got investors coming in with money, with a sense of, well, they do have ownership now or equity in the company, and feel that they'd like to have a say. Now, they may know a little bit about the project, but they may also not be a specialist in this area. So it's a matter for the CEO or the entrepreneur to be very, very strict with the investors of what level of advice and what level of influence that investor has, because I've seen many companies, investors come in and take a young company in a completely wrong direction. So it's about the CEO holding true to what their vision is. If the investor can add some value, great, but they need to be able to manage the investor. And mostly the investor is probably going to be a minority shareholder. So the entrepreneur should not feel beholden. And mostly the investors are powerful, big personalities. The CEO must stand strong in the power that they have in the business. And when I coach CEOs of young companies, what I say to them is there's three or four things that they need to do. The first is they need to get the money. So they're getting the money is they need to raise money or make revenue or get grants or get donations, whatever it is. That is the most important thing to do. They need to get the money. And part of the money, they need to, what we say, keep it in the bank. So they need to get the money, put it in the bank, and then they need to know how not to spend it.
Mm.
So again, a lot of young entrepreneurs raise money. Oh, how do we spend it? We need to spend it. My thing is, don't spend it. Like, try not to spend money. You want as long a runway as possible, as much cash as possible in the bank to last as long as possible. So it's, how do you not spend money? And that is constantly going through line item by line item what you can reduce your costs. So you want to be running at a very, very low monthly burn rate. So it's my first thing. CEOs, entrepreneurs must get the money and must not spend the money. That's first and foremost. Second is, they're the ones that keep the vision alive. So the vision of the product itself, the product design, the CEO must be absolutely instrumental in that. And then they also must be instrumental in selling. So the CEOs must be the ones in the first couple of years who are out doing the hard yards, selling. They're the best ones to sell. So I also say they need to bring a culture of sales into the project. And that for entrepreneurs who are, oh, like, I'm all creative, or hey, I'm all about, the land stewardship, or I'm all about wellness. Like, great, be that. And you're also the number one salesperson. So you need to be out on the hustle all the time. So CEOs, project leaders need to be hustling everybody that they know in every way possible to be making sales. So I think that's all kind of the money stuff and the product stuff. The other thing that they have to be good at is putting it together a high quality team. And the team needs to be great. They can't be good. And this is where I made a mistake. Well, I scaled a business from 0 people to 50 people in a very short amount of time. And I eventually was going, okay, look at that resume. Oh, look, they're good. Like, they've got a good resume. Like, we'll hire them. It's like, oh, no, that's no good. You need to be hiring the great people, because great people in a young company will do 10 times the work of an average person. So when you've got good, you need to then get to great. And great comes through creating an outstanding brand, because great people don't want to work for an average company they've never heard of. They want to work for a company that they can say, I'm proudly associated with this brand. This is the young startup land project company I'm working with. So then the brand, the custodianship of the brand also sits within the CEO's remit.
That's priceless advice. And I've heard you give it to myself and others that I know. And I'm like, wow, that's so, like, yeah, hold on to the money, don't spend it. And you made such a good point about people having to be strong leaders, because a buddy of mine used this phrase, every dollar has a DNA. So watch who you take capital from. Don't just go for, the first capital. It has to be aligned. And you have to be a strong leader not to get overpowered by that capital, and know where to step in and hold your values and principles. Yeah, so now a question comes up is, I've seen it at least in Costa Rica, but I see it often that a founder will have a great download, okay? And they're like, wow, the world really needs X. We need healing centers, or we need places for people to come together. Even sometimes they need to live together, so they want to build an eco-village, etc. And then I look at them and I see them burning out in the process. And you had mentioned building a team, which is one very strong way not to burn out. But yeah, what do you feel, and this goes now into the life advice category, for someone doing a passion project, someone working with the land and with the sacred land, as you said it earlier, this is not something to be chopped up and, oh, we didn't do it this time so well, we'll get them on the next run. These are people who are putting stuff on Mother Earth, cutting into mountains potentially carefully, or putting something on stilts. And if they get burnt out or they get stretched thin, I find that the whole project can be affected. People who are architects, engineers, lawyers were part of a field of energy trying to support the person, but really, there's only so much we can do. So whether it's in this field of land stewardship or in general, when you find founders of impact-related businesses, what do you tell them about their personal life, strategies to balance, any kind of advice you have there, or things you've learned?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I note, which is typical with early stage companies, particularly when they're in the forming part of it, is the vision is very large. So we're going to build this building and do this eco village and have this healing center, and then it's going to be a longevity center, and then it's going to do some medicine, and then and it's very large. So they kind of come in with this huge vision, and that is just going to burn everybody out. It's too big. So what I say is, bring it right down. What is the one thing that you can build, and build really well, and create that and become famous for in the world? Like, what is the one thing that this center can do or be? And you need to nail that first. Get that first, and then you build the vision after that. So instead, most people come in with, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, it's going to be great. And look at us. And everybody just gets overwhelmed and burnt out. And they do little bits of everything. They have 20 projects running all at the one time. They run out of money. Everybody gets stressed. So it's much more about what business are you in? So I ask this, really for people that are involved in land projects, like, are you a land custodian? Are you a real estate business? Are you a healing center? Are you a social enterprise, or are you a not-for-profit? And so it's what is the vehicle, the legal vehicle that you are using? So a for-profit enterprise, a not-for-profit, a social enterprise, all of these are slightly different legal constructs, but also slightly different way that you would set the business up and manage it. So, for example, if you're a for-profit business, we as investors would want to see, a strong return. If you presented as a social enterprise or social impact business, we would expect a 50% level of profitability compared to what we would in a fully profitable business. And if you're a not-for-profit, something again, blah, blah, blah. So it's what is the legal entity that, and what does that mean that the business needs to be? And then what is the one thing that you can do that you can be famous in the world? And that's where I think all entrepreneurs should aim to be the number one in their niche field in the world. If you're not aiming for that, then you may as well give it away. And to understand what that is, you need to know the market really well. So I have lots of entrepreneurs also who get very stressed, come to me and go, oh, look, I'm coming out of the banking sector and I think I'd like to create a wellness center. Okay, great. All right, excellent. You know a lot about banking. What do you know about wellness? Well, you better spend 23 hours a day learning about wellness centers. You need to know every competitor in the field. You need to know all of their vision and mission and what they do. And you need to find a gap, and you need to do something unique that's not already done. You should never produce something that's already there. So I think, Ed, just having some of these disciplines to start with, so you know what is the business you're in, what is the one thing that you can focus on, then brings it all into a really tight focus, and you can wrap a team around that and have a team be very focused on a narrow agenda, which will help reduce the stress. But back to your question about like wellness of entrepreneurs, and people, oh, you need a life balance. Absolutely not, rubbish. Like, there is no successful person in the world who has a balanced anything. It's not that at all. But it's about how can you allocate your energy across the business, raising money, your family, your health, your partner. But times there's going to be, okay, I need to spend the next 2 months raising money. So all of these other things will going to have to take a back seat. But instead of doing that unconsciously and just pissing your partner off or neglecting your children, it should all be done consciously. It's like, I'm going to need to raise money. It's going to be stressful 2 months. Dear partner, this is what I can give to you. This is what the support I need. Hey, kids, I'm going to be doing this. What time can we have during the week together where I allocate that to you? But I'm going to be 2 months. I'm going to be in like a hell realm of capital raising. So is everyone clear on this? Are we all signed up to this? Great, let's go. So there's a lot more consciousness around how to manage your health as an entrepreneur that's needed.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and I liked a few points you made, because I feel like one is my work a lot is to slow people down and focus them as well on like, what's the one thing you want to get off the ground? Imagine nothing else happened, but you got to build something. Is it your house? Is it a small prototype of the retreat center that you could add rooms to later? And yeah, even myself, having had such a big vision when I moved to Costa Rica, seeing how quickly big visions can fail, and realizing that we have to design for death sometimes. And I'm like, whoa, could have built a house there too in case this didn't all work out, at least had a place to host a dinner, let alone a retreat. So I think that's critical. And I think also what you mentioned about the expected returns, and this is where I push back on investors a lot, because I had a friend investor who wanted to do a legacy project with a lodge that he was buying. And when we showed him the returns, and I think they were like 6 or 7%, he's like, this is deplorable. And I'm like, man, if you want your 30% return, stay on Wall Street. If you want to have a legacy
Right.
project where, you can do all this regenerative stuff and farm and your kids could be there one day, then understand that this is preserving your capital in preserving land and might give a very small yield. So also sometimes I think we have to culture investors to the things they say actually translating into what happens once they see the spreadsheet because they forget, they get amnesia often, and they're like, oh no, this isn't how it looks. And like you said, you have to decide, is this what kind of investment bucket does this fall for you? Because yeah, I think a lot of the people in the LSA and people listening are the investor or the igniter, whether they put capital, they give their advice, and they also, I think there's a level of how do I put it, acculturation and a level of care that they have to give to taking one hat off that might have been in New York or somewhere else. And when they go into the jungle and they want to do these things that they've gotten the downloads for or their heart sings to them, yeah, they also have to marry that with realistic results and
Yeah,
expect.
and I think there's good ritual and process to do with investors like that. So literally, if someone is coming down to Costa Rica and they're coming from New York or London or somewhere else, to actually get them to shift out of the hat, wearing the hat of the Wall Street investor into the social enterprise investor, there could be some ritual or ceremony that's done to get them to transition from that mindset into this different mindset. So I think bringing ritual, and actually part of the book that we're writing is how to bring ritual into leadership to create different mindsets and different orientations than the traditional one that we're taught. So I think that's super important and be much easier to manage a an investor who has dropped into the land, has dropped into the fact that this isn't like a Wall Street or a stock market play, that this is multiple levels of impact and value that has been created. And ritual's a good way to get them to drop into that.
Okay, so this hits a very important question. Now we'll put on our scuba gear. So I often see two sides of this coin. I see investors who, whether they've done plant medicine or not, whether they've just had a deep cultural immersion in a country, get this idea that it's up to them. They have to fuel the regeneration of the planet, build a huge eco village or a network of retreat centers or whatever it is. And sometimes I feel like they can be very aggressive in those thoughts, where they're not really taking into consideration local indigenous population, local community. They're just bringing their idea to another country. And so we, at least in Costa Rica, but I know around the world because I work in different countries, there is this talk about neocolonialism, gentrification, people just building these retreat centers for wealthy white people from up north, and it's not always welcomed so much in these countries. So how do you marry those two issues? Because I've seen you walk deeply in the path of the indigenous and really commune, listen to the land, listen to what's needed. And yeah, especially with your background in Australia and in indigenous culture there, how do you walk both lines, wanting to create an impact but respecting Mother Earth and its inhabitants in that way?
Yeah, this is the most beautiful question. Yeah. So, look, I think there is, greatness in the power and the energy and the capital of people coming into perhaps a new country or a country where there is strong, still Indigenous traditions and wanting to help. So we just want to acknowledge that that's great.